not everything's going to be done. I'm not going to be able to just like, here's this nice little gift of solve all your problems in the 90 days. This is like more of the, let's get to know you, understand who you are as a person, the CEO, the founder, but also to know your organization so I can do that. So a lot of it is the very beginning is just learning who you are, what your mission is, and see if your mission lines up with the people that are working there, what you're doing.
Welcome to the King Dems podcast, where we share the stories of extraordinary people and dissect hot, relevant topics that shape our world. From visionary leaders to trailblazing creatives, we uncover the mindset, strategy, and grit behind greatness. Whether it's business, culture, or personal growth, we ask the real questions. This isn't just conversation, it's transformation. The King Dems podcast. Your next breakthrough starts here.
Music licensing reimagined.
We are live, ladies and gentlemen. You once again welcome to the King Dems podcast. And today I have with me a very important personality VIP out of Illinois, Chicago. Welcome, Mike, the fractional CFO and COO Strasser. How are you, Mike?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Well, for a minute, you probably thought you were a fighter. When I started this podcast, I used to speak with a lot of fighters, especially MMA fighters. You know, I have a very, very big, affinity for fighting. You know me as a finance guy, as a numbers guy, but what you probably do not know about me is I'm also a fighter in life as well. Growing up, I trained taekwondo, karate, and of course transitioned at some point to mixed martial arts and very, very big in the community of mixed martial arts. I contribute to the African Fighters podcast as well.
Impressive.
Oh, wow, you're welcome. You're welcome, my man. And of course, I have a positive bias out towards you because you are in the same business line as myself. A fractional CFO. You're not just a fractional CFO. You're a highly, highly experienced and highly resourceful fractional CFO. So, from me to you, it is welcome and well done for the great work that you do. You're highly appreciated, my man.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, you have had a really fascinating journey, from IT project management to becoming a fractional CFO and COO. What has inspired this evolution of yours, and how did you come about to where you are today?
Yeah, a lot of what from where I started after I got out of the university, I was just kind of I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, a business owner. How do I do that? So I started working with some companies doing research and development. Then I got into IT where I self-taught myself how to program certain programming languages. And as I was doing that, I realized that I didn't want to be in front of a computer putting in code.
Why?
It's people love it. Maybe it would have done really well in it. I don't know, but I realized that wasn't for me. And when I was working for a company that we worked with marketing and worked with large or Fortune 50, 100 companies, they realized I had a great way of talking with the client, and they thought maybe I should do that instead because they were having troubles with the client, and they like, "What can you be that interface between us and them because we're struggling a little bit with them?" So they brought me in to work with them, and then I realized that I love talking with people, problem solving, getting things done. So then I moved out of the IT world, and then I bridged both of those where I was working with IT people that develop code, and I was the manager of those people to the company that we worked with. So it was really, honestly, one of the first ones did this combination was working with the first data mining back then. So when you talk data mining now, where it is now, we were doing the very infancy of that back then for a large computer company.
Data mining and big data.
So we started that big data, and we were learning and digging through that when it was not well known out back then. If you look back, and I didn't realize at the time what that was called. We were just taking information and mining it and trying to figure out what's the best way to sell or to leverage the information they have to their clients. So went from that to then after that, I was like, okay, learned a bunch of information, things, how, from finances to contract negotiations to working with people. Then I started running a physician business and grew that to a sizable amount. And that's where learning operations and learning finances was where I learned it. My background's economics, but to really get into the nuts and
Wow.
bolts
Your
finances.
background is economics.
Yeah.
I do have a first degree in economics as well. So the
So
real recognize the real.
So yeah, it's something. It's just that's where again always learning. I mean, that's something I always tell people: continue to learn because you don't know where your pathway is going to be. I knew I wanted to help organizations, companies grow them, problem solve, but it's like just continue to take those steps. Continue to move forward, continue to learn, and knowing that you can evolve and reinvent yourself all the time, just saying, what do I want to do? How do I, and then the mission and my purpose was to, how do I help people? How do I grow companies? How do I help them be the best they can be? And that's kind of where you see me now as a fractional CFO, COO, is taking all the things I've learned and getting good people around me and making sure that they are knowledgeable and understand. And that's where I take it from there. So, yeah.
Problem solving, very, very important part of what we do as consultants. The only reason why these people pay us the big bucks that they pay us is for us to come address a pain point. And that's, one of the reasons why I love to help the younger generation to improve their problem solving skills. Speaking of which, for example, one of the charitable works that we do, with my company and the Kingdoms podcast is sponsoring the annual economics students conference in Bafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. So that's a conference that's been attended by 10 universities here, and we have actually put together a package wherein we incentivize the students by way of prizes for the first, second, and third students in a competition. So, what's a competition about? It's about having the students listen to the podcast and take any of the episodes, the learnings, the educational content from the episode and apply it to solving a relevant economic problem in Nigeria. So they make a 5 minute presentation on the content, and we would evaluate the students based on the quality of their presentation, the feasibility and practicability of the solutions that they are providing. And I think that's a really, really wonderful thing, and it very much aligns with, what yourself and myself stand for. I guess maybe I'll give
Yeah.
an
If
official
you can
hint.
teach and
What
help
would you like
people
to be
be critical
on the panel
thinkers,
of judges
critical thinking is
for
so important.
evaluating
It's so,
these guys?
yeah. So I think, yeah, just, I love what you're doing is like you're having people learn and understand and try to say, how do we solve current issues in our own country, our own city? How do we, what is that? Because that's the reality is we're in real life. There's always going to be decisions to be made, good and
Mhm.
bad. And there are going to be mistakes, but it's okay. How do you learn from those and how do you overcome those? And then what are you going to do to lead and make something better for the future generations? As you're saying,
Mhm.
you're working with younger people. This
Mhm.
is what you're trying to do. It's like, it's beyond me. Once I'm gone, it's like, I want the next group, next generation to, come up with better ideas. But I want to give them something to say, here's a starting point. Here's some things to think about, and then do whatever you can
Exactly.
to make it better
Exactly.
for the next generation.
Exactly. You get the assignment, and of course, I'm giving you an open invitation to be on the panel of judges, to evaluate the submissions, and let's lead the next generation in the right pathway, because there's a lot we have to give. We do a lot of impactful work. We actually help our clients to grow by way of our resourcefulness. But I strongly believe in the concept that there is no success without a successor.
Mhm. No, it's true. You have to have a successor to whatever has been laid before you, and having a plan and a mission. I think it's just great that people, thinking that way. If we all thought more that way, you just think what more can happen.
We always have to pay it forward. And, talking back about you, your careers actually span diverse industries, healthcare, SaaS, real estate. But what core strength, or would we say superpower, has consistently guided your success?
Really, a lot of it is just continual learning is the thing, and also asking for help when I need help. Understanding
I love
is the
that.
biggest thing. You never feel
Very
like you know
important.
it all.
Yes. I love one thing, about those of us that are super consultants. We pride ourselves not in the fact that we know it all, but we pride ourselves in the fact that we know where to get information whenever we need it. That's the important thing. I think people are about not knowing everything. You cannot possibly know everything.
That's
It's
why I
not
surround
possible.
myself with people that do know things in other areas and disciplines that I don't have a firm grasp on, and that's I rely on the people around me, and
Mhm,
go to their strengths and their expertise,
mhm.
and they pull in their information, and I gather it, and then I present it or I execute it so it is done in a full, the best way possible. So then the client or whoever is getting, a lot of expertise, and I might be the person presenting it or explaining it to them, but there's a lot of people behind it that are involved in that process.
I love that. So, from your own vast experience, like what are the common yet overlooked signs that a business is stuck?
Some of the signs that they're stuck, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes. So a lot of it is for science versus people are stuck. It's really is you can see their growth isn't the revenue numbers aren't well. They just can't get past a certain point, and they're frustrated. Their staff's frustrated because they're struggling. It you can tell the CEO, the leader, the visionary is overwhelmed, and the staff's overwhelmed. And I've seen that where when things are going great, everyone's excited, everyone's willing to work all those extra hours and be part of it. And then all of a sudden the grind and it's not getting any better. I'm putting more hours in, but it just doesn't seem like it's improving. And that's where coming in and basically looking at, say, talking to the CEO or the owner or the founder and saying, you look stuck, you're frustrated, you're worn out, you're not getting what you want from sales, you're not getting it from your operations, your finances are stagnant. So looking at those things and trying to figure out what it is. And sometimes it's the owner is doing too much, it's gotten past to a point where the owner or a couple of the people, let's say you have close friends or people that started this company, and they cannot continue the pace they're doing because they're not the expert, but it's cheaper to pay one versus paying five people to do that job. And that's the thing is where you have to realize after a period of time, can this thing grow and scale to beyond where it's at? Or is it just like this? It's just not going to go anywhere. That's where that's where I look at it is, okay, what are the problem areas? And then trying to understand by interviewing people and finding out, is it consistent why the growth is slowed down?
Mm. You know, there are quite a number of things to unpack with what you said. Let's start from behind. You talked about scalability. You talked about, the operational inefficiencies, and you also touched on using the appropriate human resource to achieve the outcomes that you're trying to chase. So you always talk about operational inefficiency as a silent business killer. I'd love for you to share a vivid experience, of a real world example where you were able to turn around a business that was struggling with operational inefficiencies.
Yeah, one of the things, one of my clients a couple years back, they were just struggling. Like mentioned a little bit ago, they can't figure out what's going on. They're losing money. They're having high turnover. They're just struggling with day to day business, and they can't figure it out. They were successful for a period of time, but then they hit a stagnation, in the 10 to 15 year range, and they're like, we can't figure out what's going on. So as I go in there and try to look at what is going on, you interview the employees, you interview the owner and everybody else, and just try to understand where are they at, why is this the case? And what I did is as I interviewed HR, finance, the C-suite, all the C-suite people, understanding where they're at and trying to understand what's going on. And so a lot of it was just communication. So they were just not communicating with each other. Everyone was in a silo. Everyone was like working hard and getting things done, but they never communicated with the other departments. So then nobody had any idea what was going on other than what you get an email or something in passing. So they were just struggling with that. So really teaching and walking through how do you communicate with each department and why they're doing it, not because they're saying you're doing it wrong. It's just like they just need to understand why you're wanting things. So it's really clearing that up, but just making sure the communication is good. And then looking at the next step for me was to then look and see, are the people in the right places, in the right seats?
Uh-huh.
Are they
Yeah.
doing the things that need to happen? Do they have the skill sets? And if they don't, can we teach it? Or is it something you can't teach? And sometimes during this example is there are some people that just they were never going to get it. They are at their capacity of what they
You
could do.
cannot teach an old dog new tricks.
The old dog needs to move on or something. But and again, great person. I never come in and tell someone they have to leave. It's just a matter of, hey, do you want to do this? This is where you need to be at to get to that level.
Uh-huh.
And and that's something each person has to decide. Do I want to be a continual learner and learn new things? Or do I'm just like, I'm good where I'm at? Well, someone else is gonna have to fill in that spot, because in order
Uh-huh.
for this organization to grow, vision that's being casted by the top leadership, this is where we're going. We want you to come along, but if you're not interested, and that's times I've had to tell the CEOs, like, hey, you need to be honest and be with your employees and saying, here's where we're going. We want all of us to go this direction, but this is the commitment. And this is not just like work harder, work more hours, all that. It's more like, this is education you need. I need you to do these things. I'll pay for it, but you have to do it and you have to pass it by this certain time. So incentives to do that. But you'd be amazed how some people, they have those incentives in front of them and they just pass on it because it's like, that's just not for me. I want to just stay where I'm at, and I'm good with status quo of coming to work and leaving work, and you give me a check, and I'm happy.
What a great way to segue to my next question for you. And do you want to know what the next question is?
Sure. What do you got for me?
How do you balance honesty and tact when helping business leaders confront difficult truths about their operations?
That is always that is always a tough one. I'm not saying I've done it right all the time. That is for sure. There's times that
It's
honesty,
a
there's sometimes where you can
difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, it's a tough one because you think what you're saying is being honest, but the way you deliver it is a little too harsh, because sometimes it's the first time they've heard this and it becomes a little like, wow, you just said something really awful to me. And it meant nothing that way, though. Maybe my delivery is too dry or something like that. But it's like you're trying to give someone, here's where you're at, this is where you need to be. And sometimes it's having that tact, that ability, but also to cutting through some of that stuff and just being honest. Because sometimes, depending on the leadership or the owner, founder, is like sometimes they just like it blunt, but you say it in a nice way. But you have to figure out what that is. And sometimes it's a hit and miss with people I've worked with, where it's like, oh, I think this has been this. I laid it out really nicely. Made it real friendly. And other times it's like, okay, I delivered that pretty harshly, maybe that was not, they weren't ready to hear the full everything. So
Uh-huh.
sometimes I have to do it in parts and pieces to get them to a certain point, because you've rehearsed it. We've all, it's like having a conversation. You have a conversation with yourself multiple times, but
Uh-huh.
you're the only one's had that conversation. Then when you
Uh-huh.
say it to somebody, they're like, wow, that was I wasn't ready for that. So again, it's just trying to figure out the best way to deliver a message, and knowing the intentions is truly you want to help them grow and to be successful. And that's the thing it has to come across that way.
I totally, I've, would I say this is something? And this is me being open and vulnerable. It's something I have quite struggled with in my own lifetime. My father is still, till this day, fights me, from time to time about the way I deliver harsh, messages to people. I sort of have always taken comfort in the fact that people get angry in the short run, but they get happy in the long run because I am delivering a message from a place of genuine care, and you have to take it for your own good. However, people do not always see things, that way. And it made me realize that a lot of us, consultants and what I business professionals, we actually do need to employ tact. And that put me on a journey of trying to study how to communicate more efficiently. And of course, I discovered something that a lot of us professionals actually have very high IQs, but very low EQs, that is low emotional quotient, right? But very high intellectual quotients. And of course, the most successful people are people who are well-rounded, who can balance, this. And the interesting thing is that you can actually improve on your EQ significantly, within a very short period of time. But that's not very possible for your IQ. Your IQ is, I say, more genetic in nature. It can be improved, but it's interestingly more, would I say, easier to improve your EQ than your IQ. And I think that's one thing we should try to sensitize our, co-professionals, on. It's important to understand our clients from an emotional perspective and of course know the timing, in terms of, providing information, gauge, their mood, watchful in terms of the cadence and the tone, of our communications, and also try to be empathetic and, diplomatic delivering our messages. And of course, I think that would actually hit a home run better and help them basically in terms of like their growth and their development. So talking about like the power of fractional leadership, before we started this pod, we were sharing some of our shared experiences about how clients do not even understand the fractional model and what you are actually there to help them with. Clearly, a fractional CFO or COO has roles that combines multiple skills. But why is this blend particularly powerful for mid-market companies?
I mean, having the combination of both CFO and COO for me has been really a good advantage because I understand both operations and finance. Because sometimes you're in just finance, you're so focused on numbers and you get buried into numbers and you don't look outside of how things operate, how people interact, how, as we were just talking a second ago, as you're mentioning, you have to figure out how you deliver conversations, how you deliver finances, and how you deliver operations to people because you're dealing with the consulting we probably both do is we deal with multi generations of different generations that have different ways they communicate and how they
Yeah, very,
receive
very true.
information. And the same thing with finances. So the terminology and the emotional part of understanding, have that emotional IQ and how you emotion intelligence is how you deliver this message because your message might be delivered completely different for someone that's
Mhm.
a certain age, older age, from Gen X to Boomer to whatever level
The Gen
to somebody
Zs.
that's Z. And it's just like, it's still the same. You're still delivering the same information. You just have to deliver
Mhm,
it in a different way. It's
mhm.
the delivery system is different. And it's not saying, oh, you're softening or doing this. No, you're just like, you're learning that as you work with everybody in different generations, but also multicultural things too. Is like you're now because the way our world is, we can talk across the ocean and we can have these discussions, have these meetings, and there's ways that everyone approaches how they interact, how they start introductions, how they want to know how you are, or this and this, and that's very much built in their culture. But if you come in, they're like, I'm coming right at it and just going right to the point, sometimes that comes is more of a negative thing. They have a process. So again, the IQ, the emotional intelligence of understanding when is it appropriate to how you present or how you do it, you can still have the same ending or effect. It's just a matter of how you knowing your audience is the biggest thing.
Very, very important. Know your audience, just like KYC, know your customer or know your client.
Yeah.
So, are you able to walk us through your 90-day approach to transform struggling businesses? So, what makes your process uniquely effective?
Really, as going in there is not having this for me for that 90 days, is knowing that we lay out the saying and say, here's 90 days. It's not everything's going to be done. I'm not going to be able to just like, here's this nice little gift of solve all your problems in the 90 days. This is like more of the let's get to know you, understand who you are as a person, the CEO, the founder, but also to know your organization so I can do that. So a lot of it is the very beginning is just learning who you are, what your mission is, and see if your mission lines up with the people that are working there, what you're doing. And then basically interviewing people for the first so many weeks or months of really understanding your process, understanding your employees, and then from there understanding who your client is and making sure all those match because you could have all these things that you're doing, but it's like none of them match. And it's like, well, how in the world are you even existing? Because you say this, your employees do this, and your clients are thinking something else. And it's like, you have to first see if they'll get the alignment. And that's the first part of what I do is really the psychology of it is a big portion of numbers, operational efficiency. Those are all very important, but we're not going to get to those the first month because I need to understand more about who you are and not jump in with these already preconceived ideas of what your problem is. So first learning and listening and just observing. And then as those steps go on is trying to then start digging into the inconsistencies of like, okay, what is happening here? This, you say this, but this is happening. So understanding why things don't match. And that's something for me is I've been very fortunate to have this, you can call it a gut feeling or just however you want to do it, but it's just I have that ability to discernment and observation and realize what people are saying to me isn't necessarily what's really happening and not necessarily telling them right away, I don't believe you or I don't think this is what's happening. Just continue to take my observations and then continue to draw a conclusion to what it is before I would share it with them.
We do have a mutual friend, and that is Kurt Riesheimer. Of
Yes.
course, he's the author of the book, The Founder's Evolution. So, in Riesheimer's book, he talked about transitioning from the reluctant manager phase to the disillusioned leader, and it can be really challenging. How do you support leaders, navigating these stages?
Yeah, when you look at that and how you look at the reluctant manager and just how a lot of what happens, and I've done this for myself and working through companies and organizations, like when you start a business, it's just a small group sometimes, and you're doing multiple jobs. So you have wear multiple hats and you do this thing over time, and all of a sudden you're just like, well, I'm the only one who can do this. I'm the only one who can do this, this, and this, and I know where I want to go. So it's faster for me to do all these, these five different jobs at once. And the reality is it's not. It's just it got you to where you're at. Doesn't say you're not successful, but you're only going to reach a certain level of success with that mindset. So then they're getting burned out. They are the owners like, okay, I can't keep this up, but they still believe, well, I'm the only one that can do it. And so really coming in there and saying, okay, we need to look at, can we separate what you're doing? You need to be the visionary. You need to be the person who is coaching and pushing, getting people in the right places and, empowering people to do the things they need to do, finding the right people to take over your job, basically. You're not, doesn't mean you're not doing it, but as I think Scott put in his book, kind of like you become the coach, the encourager, you're not the player anymore, as he put it in his I think in his book. You're more of the person who's managing the teams. You're overseeing. You're making sure that they're staying with the vision, but you're not day to day. You're not in the trenches constantly doing the things like you have other people who can do that. People are better, more efficient, has a background in that. You can do it, but should you be doing it? And that's the thing you have to get the owner to realize like just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
And it's
And that
very
yeah,
important for efficiency.
Yes, and, it looks efficient when you're doing it, but when you step back and when I've pulled people, owners out of that mindset, and they're moving to the next phase of more coaching, and they're still running the company, they're still doing things, but it's like they're looking at a different perspective, and they're like, now they can actually see more things that they could do or their company can do because they're not so focused internally all the time. They can take a little bit bigger view and see the pieces moving and see how it can be more efficient. But when you're in it all the time, you're just not going to be able to see it.
Exactly. And that leads us to the distinction between growth versus scale. You emphasize a distinction between scaling and growing a business. So, can you clarify the distinction with practical examples?
Yeah, with growth and scaling, what I've experienced, and as I walk through this with companies in the recent time, is you can grow, the large size, and whatever that growth is it revenue? Is it employees? What is it, market share? So you could grow, and what happens is, let's say you're making a profit of your company is doing well. You're a $5 million company and you're making a good, healthy profit, but then you grow to where now you're expanding. Either you need more employees, or you're taking more territory. You're kind of, your product, or that. So when I was working with somebody, they were trying to grow beyond the area, the city that they were in. So they're kind of going further out to the state, and then nationally, and then internationally. Well, they were growing at such a rapid rate that their expenses became so high and their revenue was going up, but their expenses were well past their revenue. So they were more profitable about between 5 and 8 million than they were when they were at 15 to 20 million. So I was like, "Well, what happened there?" It's like, I'm making twice the amount, I'm growing, and I'm making more revenue than I ever have, but I'm actually losing money, or I'm making less profit because of that. And it's like, so all of a sudden your expenses went well past your revenue, and you're like, well, what do I do? Do I go back to, is it, I rather make more profit, so I'm going to go back to being smaller. And some people have done that. Or other people say, well, what do I going to have to do? What do I have to make 30 million in revenue a year? Or do I have to make, what is that number to finally cross back over where the revenue is more than your expenses? And that's where you look at the scalability and saying, how do I scale to the point where I'm not in debt. I'm not, my expenses are not over my revenue, and trying to look at, as where's that cross point where you're trying to finally say, hey, I finally have now crossed back over to where I'm making a nice profit, and I can grow and I can scale to where it's not detrimental to the company where I'm taking on more debt. So that's whereas I've taken these companies and I've like, okay, here's your choices. What do you want to do? Do you want to grow your company? Do you want to scale your company, or do you want to sell your company? So then you have those choices, and based off what your answer is, I will direct you. And that's what I did. I've done that with several companies where they just wanted to grow. So I said, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to grow it, and you want to sell it. So I'll prep it for sale, and this is what you need to do to show that. If you're looking to scale and want to be, state, national, international, here's what you're going to have to do. And this is what I've done before, where they've been very successful, to where it's like, oh, and it's just these tweaks that they just could not see how to navigate that. And I would show them through their operations how they need to be more efficient in reorganizing how they do distribution, and how they, drop things in one place or another because they're working in multiple states. And I was like, well, how do we do that? So I had to work on their
Operational
transportation.
efficiency.
Yes, the efficiency. That is the biggest thing. So there's, again, walking through the efficiencies, and then also to looking at as what is holding you back, financially. What is it? Is it your borrowing power, your cash flow, and improving their cash flow? That's the other thing I've done a lot with companies recently, is their cash flow is horrible. Their receivables are awful. They owe a lot of people, and they're just trying to stay afloat of, staying ahead of the payables. And it's like, we got to get you more money coming in on a consistent basis, so you can make plans, you can make adjustments when you need to, and not do it out of fear that you're going to have to, you know, fail, or take a loan out, or whatever you have to do.
I'm smiling because you are actually hitting the nail on the head. And I like to summarize it this way. I tell my clients, my very, very one responsibility to you is to help you achieve a sustained net positive cash flows. Simple. Why? Because revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king, or you can call cash your. And my business model is to help businesses start up, scale up, and sell out. That's simple. But you have done the great job of giving them, expatiated, long form, good, solid analogy, analysis, explanation of what we do. And of
Yeah.
course, God bless you for that. I just like to give them the bullet points. It's interesting how sometimes these actually work to their own detriment. I do understand that you have business owners that are fantastic in like different subject matter areas, the different subject matter experts, but they are not finance experts and they are not business, growth and development experts. And we always have to come to their rescue. You talked about how something as simple as your supply chain can cause, operational inefficiencies and tend to erode your profit. You know, Sometimes these businesses do not see the point wherein the operational expenses, the OPEX, tends to climb faster or rise faster than the rate of revenue. And in that case, you see your business growing or you're making less profit. So in what scenarios EO proactively engage a fractional CFO slash COO, right? As opposed to reactively responding to a crisis. Now, all of the scenarios, right? At what point should a CEO proactively engage the services of a fractional CFO or COO as opposed to reactively responding, to a crisis situation?
Yeah, I think for a response, I think a CEO has to look at a fractional CFO and CEO when to bring them in. Is I think they have to. That's the hard thing is getting people to understand when they need to bring someone in. You don't want to, crisis is a lot of times where I've been brought in because they're at the end of things. They can't figure this out. I've even had banking institutions reach out to me and saying, there's this so and so group. I can't say who they are. I've been telling them to go to you, and they have been struggling for a year, 2 years, and they're just coming to a point, and it's like, I just encourage them, say, go back to them and say, encourage them to do this. This is not a knock at them. It's not a failure. It's just you're concerned with their well-being as a company, as an owner to engage in this. So it's just trying to get, I would prefer more with when they're not in crisis mode because then you have to move fast and you have to things are going to have to be decided a little bit quicker. But I work well in crisis mode. That is just something I've always all my life I've always when the alarm is sound and people somehow always find me. And that's when I come in, and the success rate's been very good, but it's very stressful for everybody because that's just the nature of it. Because you're coming in, it's like when you're sick and you go to the doctor and it's like like, oh, I've had this pain. And well, how long have you had it? Oh, I've had it over a year. Well, why'd you wait till now to come to me to help diagnose and treat you? And that's sometimes what we do is we get used to the pain, used to the discomfort, and think it's okay. And then all of a sudden it's you get to the point where like, hopefully I can help you. Yes, I can. I'll try. But sometimes it could be past the point of what you can do. Other times, I would say if you're in a growth phase or a scalability thing, that's when you reach out to a fractional CFO, COO, because they can go and look at this. It doesn't mean you don't already have a CEO and a CFO in your own organization. This means now you're bringing an expert in for the growth and scalability part of it that maybe they've not experienced themselves. They've been with the company and now you need someone that has that expertise. It's like, hey, I've done this before. I've done this in this industry. Let me show you. I'll work alongside you. I'm going to give you the tips and tricks of how to do this, and I'm going to guide you through this for your success. I'm only here for a fractional of the time, and by the time I leave, you're going to be on to next step of success that you want to have as a company. And I think that is where too is where the C-suite, the owner, founder should be bringing in people like myself and you to basically say, hey, we're ready for the next step and we want to do this the right way and not the wrong way. That's the best way to do it.
Speaking of the pressure that comes, I'd say diamonds are made under pressure.
I guess I made a lot of diamonds in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Scott Reisheimer says success at one stage oftentimes, becomes a challenge at the next stage. So have you actually found this to be true? And how do you try to address this challenge?
That was a good question. Mm.
Many thanks. Shout out to Scott Reisheimer, actually. Big shout out to you, brother. We appreciate your body of work.
Yes. So I'm trying to think what Scott put in there. Yeah, I have to go back and look at that. I don't know. Scott would be
In the best position, to answer
yes.
that. I think it's more about, when people do the hard work, especially in terms of the efficiencies, like what has brought you here would not, take you far in the next phase of the. I guess that's what he's probably trying to say. But yeah, we would hear from the horse's mouth soon. We would have him
Uh,
on the podcast on the
Read his
podcast
book.
again.
Yes, reread his book.
Before we let you go, we know you are a very busy man. Would like for you to share an inspiring client story where your intervention not only improved their financial outcomes, but also significantly enhanced their organizational culture.
So like you said, inspirational. This is something that I've done with a group before. Is that you're asking?
Basically, how your intervention with the company was able to help them improve their financial performance
Yeah.
and
So
also help
yeah,
them in
just
their company
recently,
culture.
as I was working with an organization that's probably about, I would say 400, 500 employees, very large organization. And the savings and actually money that I was able to find them was, over $1 million just in the first 6, 8 months of working with them is looking at their overall organization and looking at just their processes and how to break down some of the silos they had. And that's just the initial part of it is just saying, okay, here's what you've done, here's how you can improve. And this is kind of where and this is a recent success is taking something, being there for a very short time and then saying, hey, by making this small change and doing this communication with this department, this is going to save you money. And which that does is then you can now forecast and be more efficient and have a reason to hire or to expand your area that you're trying to do and to be able to do to expand your company to other locations. And that's what they've done in a short time. And that was just me looking from stepping back and not being in the weeds of it. And that was how I was able to help them do that.
Interesting. I am going to proceed to the quick fire round.
All right.
Questions for you, quick fire. Just tell me what comes to your mind first. So, number one, what's the most influential book every entrepreneur should read?
Wow, there are so many books out there. That's the thing is, I've read so many books over the time, and it just depends on the mood that I'm in. I've been reading a lot of psychology books lately that just are kind of influential to me because of understanding who you are and what makes you make the decisions. There's anywhere from let's say the body keeps the score, which is more of a psychology book to whereas your past and what things have done to you is how you adapt and how you it remembers the traumas and all those things. And it's like, how do you interact and how do you talk and relate to people? And that just, again, relationships, no matter if it's not particularly for your business, is how do you interact with your employees? How do you interact with your clients? And a lot of it has to do with how you grew up and how you perceive things, how your body is perceived things. So
Mhm.
it's the emotional part that is a big key. Uh, that there's the what is it? I can't remember. It's Never Split the Difference. I think can't remember the gentleman's name. He used to be a former FBI profiler, and it's just more of how you negotiate and how you communicate and command a room or command a certain situation. So again, it was just more of for me, it was more psychological. It's like, how do you, when you see somebody and you look at them and between their facial expression, their eye movement, things like that, their hand movements. How are they communicating? How do you communicate something that you want something to happen, but is it your voice, your tone, the expressions of your face? Is that killing off the deal? And that's some of it too, is learning from that. And that not just for me as a sales thing, but also too as you're working with people, to help them realize that maybe the way they're saying it is not the way people are interpreting it.
Exactly. I think you just touched on what I spoke about earlier. In terms of my own journey on self development. Yeah, I did have to read those books on psychology. Especially emotional intelligence, very very important. Your tone, your cadence, your pitch. Does affect people. People are very sensitive, and you have to be compassionate. And of course, speaking of being compassionate, I recently interviewed Bruno Signaco. He wrote the book, The Art of Compassionate Business. I think it's a book I strongly, strongly recommend for every entrepreneur. That is a book that addresses what you have just said. And of course, you should also get a copy of that book. Very, very fantastic book. So your favorite productivity or tool, what would that be?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I was thinking about that, and it's just more of I know I can forget the gentleman's name, but it's just one of the things is like if there's something you can accomplish in 2 minutes or less, make sure those are out of the way. I'm an efficiency person. You're a list, I'm a list person. Let's get through all these things, knowing that certain things take more time, but if ones that are you can just take off the list right away, get those out of the way, so your mind is free to focus on the bigger task. So anything that's is something you can obtain and do in less than 2 minutes, do that. Do those things. That's kind of a thing I do is like, what are the easiest things? Move those out of the way so you can focus on use your brain power for the things that are going to be a little more complex.
Rock, sands, and pebbles. Have you ever heard of that analogy? Productivity. I'm curious.
Tool. I don't really have a particular tool that I use for productivity. I've just used a lot of just different things, just trying to look at just more efficiency. I'm just trying to look at see. There's not one particular tool I use. Just pretty much anything, pretty much all my experiences. I just take those and kind of put those all together, and just I wish I had a definitive thing I could say. This is the tool to use.
But you know something, you know what I think is the most underrated productivity or project management tool? Do you know what I think it is?
What's that?
Your digital calendar. That is very, very important, even for friends and family. When they need me to address something, I tell them, put time in my calendar. And some people feel offended about it, but trust me, that is the most efficient tool that has been created by mankind. Let's
I
not deceive ourselves. It helps you manage your time properly.
Yes, I live by my calendar. I have to do that just because there's things that are pulling me all different directions, and it's just best because I can give you all the time I need if it's on the
Exactly.
calendar.
Yeah, fantastic. So, number three, what's the toughest business lesson you've learned personally?
Toughest thing I've learned is, oh man, at times I think it's more of I can't do everything on my own. I like to try, and that has been something I always continue to have to always learn is like I need to bring in certain people, certain experts, or learn that that's just, I can't do it all, but I will sure try.
Hmm.
So a fine oiled machine or something like that is just more of like everything's just got to be running smooth. You got to make sure everything is operation moving like you think about like a clock. It's just how all the mechanisms in a clock are moving and how efficient they are. And you almost want to make sure all the gears, everything is just done right. And it's just like you open up a timepiece and you look at how well it's put together and how well it moves. And it's just like that is what you're trying to do is you're trying to make everything efficient and it moves and it fits just perfectly in there and trying to see can you accomplish that and keeping good time.
One daily habit that helps you maintain clarity and focus.
Yeah, for me, it's just stepping away from some of the things I do. So I always on a daily basis for me is exercise. I work out, I run. So in the morning I get up early.
mind body synergy, very important. I do have an episode on that. You should go check it out. Oh, man, it's quite interesting. We have actually come to the end, but I'll give you an opportunity to give one last advice to business owners, as a big brother that you are. But I always say something on the podcast: an attitude of gratitude is good attitude. And anytime a person shares their time with you, they're sharing their life with you. The SI unit for sharing, for measuring life is time. So a very big thank you to you, Mike Strasser. I am very, very grateful. I do have a positive bias towards you because of the kind of professional that you are, but always have to be an objective person. You're a great individual. You're a fantastic person. I wish you the very, very best, in all that you do. And of course, it would be great to have you on the platform sometime again in the future. I want to encourage our audience to go check out the great work that you do. And of course, if they want to work with you, your website is consultstraza.com. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And of course, on LinkedIn, you are Michael Straza. That is linkedin.com/in/Michael Straza. I will have that in the show notes in the description. So, guys, go check out Michael Straza. Do you want to leave a shout out to anyone before you leave? And of course, what's your last piece of advice to our budding entrepreneurs out there?
No, it's just more of, if you have a dream out there, I just look at it as continue everyone to continue to dream big, and find the people that can help you. And it's just, define your thing of success and find the people that can help you be successful. And that's kind of what I hope that's people be inspired to invent, to create, and to be better for their community and to be able to share their experiences and their knowledge.
Interesting stuff. And of course, our audience, please do the right thing. Guys, go like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, your family. And of course, we do have a weekly competition. The individual with the best engagement on the platform gets to win 50 Great British pounds. So you want a slice of the cake, guys. So go do the right thing. And of course, from me to Mike Strasser, it is love and respect to you, brother. And of course, you guys out there, love and respect to you guys. And of course, till I come your way again, stay out of trouble. And of course, keep pushing for your goals. Always push for something very, very important. And of course, make impact, guys. It's bye from me for now.